Donald Trump at this moment still with his intelligence community, his Secretary of Defense at Tulsi Gabbard, nobody knows where the Iranian nuclear stockpile is, the uranium stockpile. And to hear Pete Hegseth talk about it at a press conference, he believes it might be still at Fordo. Let me get this straight. You just spent an entire press conference telling the world that you either set back the nuclear capacity of Iran forever back to the Stone Age, or significantly, or you obliterated it, or pick an adjective of the day. Then you admit you can't properly assess what happened there because you're still in the early stages of assessment. But then you claim that the uranium is still deep in Fordo. Fordo, the hardened mountain facility that you just dropped 12 bunker buster bombs on from 50,000 feet with two B-2 bombers? You think the uranium is still there? Then what about the satellite imagery showing trucks leaving Fordo before the Israelis started bombing on the 13th of June? And what about Pickaxe Mountain, where is another hardened facility that's been under construction for a number of years that's double the depth, almost the equivalent of a 40 or 50-story building upside down that you didn't hit? And then you stand in front of the American people and you say it's all CNN and New York Times' fault? As Donald Trump takes to social media and says that CNN reporters and New York Times reporters should all be fired. Why? Because they reported properly a top secret classified document coming out of the Trump Defense Department intelligence community under Tulsi Gabbard that said the initial preliminary snap judgment assessment was that perhaps that the nuclear capacity was only set back a few months. And you don't like that report. You don't like that report before Pete Hegseth and General Kane take to the podium, wrapped in a flag to talk about the brave, apparently only boys were in the bomber when we know there were women in there as well. But you just want to wrap yourself in a flag and talk about patriotism. We want to talk about intelligence and the proper role of the First Amendment and freedom of the press as Donald Trump goes after CNN and New York Times again with another letter from that lawyer in Coral Gables, Florida, Alejandro Brito, back again, the guy that sued Michael Cohen and had the case dismissed, who went after ABC News because George Stephanopoulos had a slip of the tongue and said rape instead of sexual abuse, as the jury found against Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll case. And now he's sending nasty letters to the New York Times and CNN, and they're fighting back. So are we. We're here together on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok. Let's get to it. Friday morning. Oh, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. That's from a movie. All right, look. The Times and CNN did their job. They got a copy of a top secret classified document from the Department of Defense intelligence community under Tulsi Gabbard, and they reported on it. And they said it was a preliminary assessment subject to change. I agree, and I will concede that we are still gathering data and information through intelligence communities around the world, including through Israel, including through the United States, about what finally transpired in the postmortem after the bombing run by the Americans. But for Donald Trump not to wait for the assessment and to come out wrapped in an American flag saying, mission accomplished. Who does that sound like? We did it. 12-day war is over. We set them back to the Stone Ages. That was a little bit premature, don't you think? Considering at the very same time in a split screen, his own defense community says they can't make that assessment. And what was the New York Times and the CNN supposed to do with the story? Sit on it? Well, it's preliminary. Maybe we should just wait and see what... Come on. That is what the media is for. That is what the press is for. That's what stops us from having a tyrant, from slipping into tyranny in this country, is the free press. And the New York Times has fought back. David McCaw, who I've had some interaction with in the past in a positive way, is the general counsel, First Amendment lawyer for the New York Times. He fired back. He says, we stand by our reporting. We said it was preliminary, the second word of the article. Alejandro Brito, who I never heard of. I don't know where they found him. I practiced in Miami for a long time. I never heard of this guy, right? Put that aside for a minute. So he sends the nasty letter to CNN claiming that they're going to sue for defamation because the presidency's reputation was undermined by what? By reporting about preliminary assessment? And now you got Pete Hegseth, who's very easy to tie up in knots, tongue-tied, wrapped around his own axle during a press conference about the press reports. And then more fundamentally, I'm going to play 2 clips back to back. More fundamentally, he's literally lost sight of where the enriched uranium is. I thought that was the whole shooting match. I thought we needed to know where that was, because that is what gets shoved into 10 bombs and warheads provided by the Russians. And now we're right back where we started. So stop celebrating. We're all patriots. Stop attacking other Americans for questioning, having the temerity to question this presidency. It doesn't make me un-American, right? To hold the president's feet to the fire, to report on things that have been given to the press about preliminary assessments. Let me play you the back-to-back clips. By the way, there was no more uncomfortable person in any given room than General Kane having to stand before Hegseth with his P.T. Barnum political hack routine about a military operation. I don't think he's qualified to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. From his military experience, they bumped him up a whole rank to get him to 4-star general. I just don't think he's got the experience. But I have nothing as of yet to say that he is a political hack or he's allowed himself to be captured by the Trump administration outright. Let's play the back-to-back clips. One, Hegseth going after the media. Why can't we wrap ourselves in a flag for a moment? Because that's not what our job is, either on this side of the reporting or that. And 2, him doing the humna moment and double talking about Fordo. You can't have it both ways, Pete. You can't say you destroyed and obliterated the Fordo mountain lair where they were doing their nuclear work, 20 stories below ground, because you hit it with 12 bunker buster bombs from a B-2 bomber 50,000 feet in the air. You can't say you destroyed it and then say, but that's where we think the uranium is. What? That's malpractice if that's what you think, Or is it what other intelligence is reporting, that there were trucks taking out the uranium before the bombing run? Both the Israeli one on the 13th of June that started, and then the one last Saturday by the Americans. It's not hard just to envision this. The 418 or so kilograms of enriched uranium. You can stick that in apparently 16 canisters about the size of a regular size hot water heater. Not hard to load into the back of a truck and move it. And we have satellite imagery that shows that. And then you've got the fourth facility that wasn't hit. That even the New York Post, which is run by Rupert Murdoch, said, what about Pickaxe Mountain? Sounds like a perverse Disney movie. Return to Pickaxe Mountain. Yeah, it's 660 feet below ground, double the length of Fordo. And it easily could be the place where the uranium is stored. The point is, I don't know. They don't know. It can't be that it's underneath the rubble of Fordo. Jesus. It's just mind-boggling. I think that's why you come to Legal AF. While you're here, hit the subscribe button, by the way. All right. So let me play the back-to-back clips at the press conference yesterday, where they right on cue from the script developed by Donald Trump, go after the media and then have this incredulous comment that the uranium is still at Fordo. Let's play the clips.
Sure, like I said, we don't do BDA. I'll refer that to the intelligence community. And
you're talking with them. I mean, what changed in the past 3 days that make you so,
sir, I think I
think I explained what changed. There was a great deal of irresponsible reporting based on leaks, preliminary information in low confidence. Again, when someone leaks something, they do it with an agenda. And when you leak a portion of an intelligence assessment, but just a little portion, just the little portion that makes it seem like maybe the strike wasn't effective, then you start a news cycle, whether it's the Washington Post or Fox News or CNN or MSNBC, you start a news cycle that starts to call into question the efficacy. No, that's why. So you bring the chairman here, who's not involved in politics. He didn't do politics. That's my lane to understand and translate and talk about those types of things. So I can use the word obliterated. He could use defeat, destroyed, assess, all of those things. But ultimately, we're here to clarify what these weapons are capable of, which anyone with, two eyes, some ears, and a brain can recognize that kind of firepower with that specificity at that location and others is going to have a devastating effect.
It's about highly enriched uranium. Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo Mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance. Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says. I'm familiar.
Report about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night, and in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging
You
that
have
this was the
issues.
the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that.
So hats off and kudos to CNN and the New York Times. Here's how CNN handled it in their posting. New York Times had a letter that was written, and CNN posted on their social media what their response was going to be. This is after Donald Trump went after CNN and New York Times. Fire the reporters, fire them all. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of the University of Virginia's president, all sorts of things. But here's how CNN and its communications department reported it on their social media. We stand 100% behind Natasha Bertrand's journalism, and specifically her and her colleagues' reporting of the early intelligence assessment of the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. CNN's reporting made clear that this was an initial finding that could change with additional intelligence. We have extensively covered Trump's own deep skepticism about it. However, we do not believe it is reasonable to criticize CNN reporters for accurately reporting the existence of the assessment and accurately characterizing its findings, which are in the public interest. This is the same reporter that Donald Trump fired Natasha Bertrand. She's a hack. We should get rid of her. Same old thing. What you want to detract from a operation that you already declared victory on, and said you sent back the nuclear capacity of Iran to the Stone Age. And then when there's reporting that undermines you, you attack them and threaten them with defamation. Good luck. I'm glad the New York Times, led by David McCaw, and CNN here is defending the reporters, telling the truth and reporting it the way it is. They're allowed to make that report and that assessment. And, all we're watching with Donald Trump is him trying to have these distracting, diversionary tactics to take away from his mental incapacity at times and his decision-making, poor decision-making. And we'll continue to report on it right here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and come right back. Legal AF, the Substack. We post all the documents and information and filings along with commentary, and Legal AF, the podcast. And with your help, I want to do a quick congratulations and thank you. We are now, the podcast, Legal AF is now in the top 50 on all genres YouTube podcast in the world in the weekly rankings. And my work here on Legal AF, what we call The Intersection, my podcast and my hot takes, is also in the top 90 of all podcasts. So I really appreciate your fervent support. Let people know about us and have them join our movement as part of their journey. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.